And now to focus on that recent assassination by Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico, as well as those threats coming out of Belarus. We're joined now by Franak Viačorka Senior Advisor to Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya's office. Thanks for joining us here on the program. Good to have you.
Hello, good afternoon.
Now, I want to jump into the breaking news that we're hearing. As we said, this attempted assassination attempt is shocking news. We have, obviously, information that the Prime Minister is in critical condition, that these next hours are going to be absolutely crucial to his survival, whether he pulls through or not. Let's really talk about what this means for Slovakia, and also right now on the ground, potentially in either way. He's incapacitated, potentially he may not make it. Who is in charge? Who is running the Prime Minister's office?
Of course, these news are shocking, and it shows that no one is safe, even in the European Union. We don't know who is behind this attack, but it's changing completely the whole situation. Right now, we are in Poznan, Poland, at the conference where thousands of people participate, and we see that immediately the Polish security are trying to increase the security measures around this conference, and I think the same will happen across all the European Union. So it's changed the situation not only for Slovakia, but for Europe as well. We wish Robert Fico recovery. Of course, we condemn the violence, but we need more information who is behind and what are motives.
Indeed.
On the back of that, do we have any signals as to what kind of political impact this event may have on Slovakia?
So that definitely, let's wait primarily for more information from the police to understand who is assassin, possible attacker, but also let's wait for recovery of Robert Fico, and that will give us more understanding what to expect in next months. Let's not forget that Robert Fico is recently became prime minister, and he was not aligning very much with the EU policy regarding Ukraine. So to blame that it was done by some forces related to Russia would be too premature. Was it just some internal domestic political fight? Also cannot be excluded. Slovakia, of course, is in stress and shock right now. There are other governments. There is a vice prime minister there. There is a speaker of parliament who can take care of ruling the country for the moment. But it's too early to say.
I mean, indeed, it is too early to tell, and as you said, we have only certain facts available, and we're going to wait until we do have conclusive evidence of who was behind this. I mean, it's shocking nonetheless. I believe it was 3 or 4 strikes on his body, in his lower abdomen, in his leg, and he is in critical condition. Now, we just spoke to a guest earlier as well who said the only way of change is political change. So let us also now move to your region and to Belarus. I mean, in recent days, there's been a lot of attention more, especially when it comes to the defector from Poland, former Judge Schmidt, who has run off to Belarus, and those implications on the security services. What do you, if you can just assess this last week, and what has that meant for Belarus now more in the limelight? Do you see more attention now on Belarus because of all this?
We see that Putin and Lukashenko, they escalate pressure on Poland primarily, but also Baltic neighbors and the entire European Union with their statements, pro-war statement, how they celebrated the May 9. It was not the celebration of the victory, it was a celebration of the war. And they used the anti-European rhetorics in their statements. Also, Lukashenko threatened the West with a nuclear war. And then there was attack of migrants, the new wave of migrants brought by Lukashenko special services to the border with Poland. So it means they're interested in escalation right now. Perhaps it's happening before peace summit in Switzerland to put more pressure on countries and government not to take Ukrainian position. Also, the goal is to distract the European countries from helping Ukraine. So they are more focused on strengthening their own border, their own security in Lithuania and Poland primarily. And the visit of Prime Minister Donald Tusk to the border show this. But we say, and we repeat as Belarusian Democratic Forces, that we should treat not just symptoms. We should treat the cause of the problem. The cause of the problem is legitimate regimes of Putin and Lukashenko. And not only sanctions, not only pressure from outside can help, but also pressure from inside. And we ask to support us, democratic forces, but because we can really make a change, we still have influence from inside. We also deliver very useful insights, insightful information from people inside the regime. We see that there is no unity within nomenclatura. Not everyone supports this pro-war propaganda rhetorics of Lukashenko. So next month, next year, perhaps, could be decisive for the whole situation in the region.
Yes, and on the back of what you've just said, there have been signals in the Polish press from the Belarusian opposition that signal that the Lukashenko regime is planning some coordinated attack on Poland that would include former Wagnerites, Chechens posing as immigrants who are actually trained spies. And this might be coming within the next few days. Do you have any further details or any additional information that you might be able to share with us?
We were checking this information. It seems just blackmail. It's just psyops, psychological operations against Poland. But we can't exclude it because we are dealing with a criminal gang, with unpredictable, crazy dictators, and we don't know what will come to their minds of Putin and Lukashenko. But the rhetorics itself about provocations, about the war, of course, it also causes harm. It also creates panic. It also splits European societies, and I think this is the main goal of this rhetoric. But I don't think Putin and Lukashenko have now enough resources to open the new front. They are barely keep Ukraine's counterattack. They can't make any success on the eastern front of Ukraine, not speaking about the opening the new front. Also, Russia doesn't have enough forces in Belarus to create any sustainable pressure or even more to create to attack openly. So I don't think it's possible, but in terms of rhetorics, it's dangerous.
But on the back of that, I wanted to ask you, do you think that Poland has been downplaying Belarus as an independent threat entirely separate to Russia for too long?
I think Poland is conducting policy of dividing, distinguishing Belarusian people and Belarus regime, which is very right position. We have to understand that Lukashenko's regime became a puppet to Putin and serving Putin's interest. We called it creeping occupation, like in the Second World War, Vichy's France was serving Hitler, but externally it was looking as an independent, separate country. So the same Lukashenko for Putin right now. And I think this policy must continue. Maximize pressure on Lukashenko's regime, but also helping Belarusian people to get out of the Russian close of Lukashenko's tyranny. Poland is very active on the international arena. Poland is very active in the European Union, and Poland is supporting right now the sanctions discussion on Belarus. Just recently, last week, this discussion on new package has started in Brussels, and I think it's very important that sanctions between Russia and Lukashenko's regime will be synchronized.
But as you said there, discussions on new sanctions have just been started. It's one of those things that can be mirrored with Russian sanctions. We're looking at the 14th package against discussions, its timing. I think this is also one of those things, not just so much blaming Belarus, but has potentially Poland, the region, the European Union, not taken that threat from Belarus as seriously as it should have? Is this now also potentially a fault of the West, maybe dropping the ball of being more serious, and also, as Maria had alluded to, looking at Belarus as an entity by itself or together? Have we not done enough, and will we now do more because of the recent weeks and what we've heard?
I think there was some naivety or perhaps misunderstanding. There was some downplaying, the role of Belarus, because all attention was on Ukraine, and Belarus was forgotten, which allowed actually Lukashenko to intensify repressions and which allowed Russians to increase their presence in Belarus, including the deployment of nuclear weapons. Right now, there is a clear understanding that Lukashenko's regime is the same dangerous as Putin regime. There is much more attention on Belarus right now than was before. Belarus is crucial for Putin because without control over Belarus, Russia will not be able to achieve any success in Ukraine. But also Belarus is the weakest Putin's link because in contrast to Russia, in Belarus, actually, there is no support for Russian activities and there is no support for Lukashenko. So I think we should see Belarus not only as the threat, but also as the opportunity.
I want to ask you also a political question here. I mean, we've had the pleasure to interview Ms. Tsikhanouskaya a few times here at tvpworld. And I think very much as we've seen, she's very much an ardent supporter of her democracy, of her people. But on that note as well, I mean, it does seem, though, that there is not a huge unity on political opposition without, I think, externally within Belarus. If you look outside, we have Ms. Tsikhanouskaya, who's received as the de facto leader, but yet we have different Belarusian opposition in different countries around Europe. So how much is that disunity part of this problem of bringing change into Belarus?
I think actually there is unity. There is a clear structure, institutions of power. There is President-elect Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, who received her mandate in 2020 election, won and recognized as the leader by Belarusian democratic forces, but also by international community. There is Coordination Council, which represents very different political parties, from very left to very right. And of course, there are debates, there are discussions, but this is democracy. What is democracy about? And there is the cabinet, like a government in exile of Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, which also represents very different group. I am in the movement for 30 years, since my childhood in democratic movement, and I must say that Belarusian opposition is united as ever. Of course, regime is trying to split the democratic forces, but right now I think it's quite in good shape. Of course, we need resources. Of course, we need more support. Of course, we lack space inside the country, and the underground movement is quite weak and attacked right now by the regime. But I don't think its situation is dramatic. I think situation for Lukashenko looks not worse, but it's pretty bad as well.
And one last question, the question of the Suwałki gap. Would you be able to tell us how much that point is at threat? We hear about it, comes up in the media every so often, then it sort of gets forgotten. Can you just give us your thoughts on that?
I think this is the weak point which Russia and Lukashenko potentially can use in case of escalation. There was talk about possible attack on Suwałki Gap and taking this by Russian forces in 2022. Right now, it's quite impossible. Russia is not almighty. Russia has very limited resources. We see that they lack even people. So they take out their troops from Belarus and move to the eastern part of Ukraine, occupied territories, because they don't have enough people and resources and army to keep on Belarus. So I don't think it's the matter of today or tomorrow, but potentially in case if the West will not demonstrate enough strength in countering Putin and Lukashenko, of course they will be looking at Suwałki Gap as the possible next step of escalation.
All right, so interesting insights there. And I think also so important, as you said, as not just Poland, but Europe needs to keep its eye on Belarus, keep up that pressure, and hopefully that will continue and make change in Belarus happen at last. Thank you so much for all that. That was the insights there. Franak Viačorka, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.